You are the icing on my cake. You are the smile I can't replace. You are.
Hiya, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today I thought I would do one of our bake date videos. It's been such a long time. So today's bake date is an easy peasy vegetable lasagna. So previously I did a normal lasagna, so I thought I would share with you the one that I make for my mum who loves the vegetarian version. So I hope you will like it too. So let's get baking. So we're actually going to start out with some frozen onions. Now normally I probably would use a real onion for this, but mum prefers the slightly softer flavour that you get from the frozen onions. It's not quite as strong as a real one. So I just put a few in a bowl so they start to defrost while I'm chopping up the veg. So here we are, just going to be cutting up the peppers. So I just go round in a circle around the top of the pepper where the stalk is, and then I go round the whole base, and then it just sort of falls apart as you see there. Then I just take those pieces and I slice them, and then I chop them into small cubes. Now I do that because that sort of makes a really nice kind of sort of base for the vegetable lasagna, but if you prefer a more chunky kind of a sort of feel to it, then that's fine too. I don't think it's a problem, long as you make sure that it cooks through fine. Now as you can see, I got 4 different colours there which I chopped up, and don't they look really appealing on the plate there? So then the next thing that I need to do is my courgette. Now you can see all the rubbish at the side there. There's no point throwing it away at this point. You're going to make more, so why waste time? Let's just leave it at the side and we'll chuck it all away in a bit. So just chop, obviously all of these have been washed, which is why they look a bit weird, and just chop the 2 ends off your courgette, cut it down the center. Just be careful because the courgette can be quite slippery, and if you're not careful your knife can kind of slide off to the left or the right, and if you're not careful your fingers will be in the way. So just be cautious of that. And again, for me, I'm going for the smaller chunks, but if you prefer, then obviously go for large ones if you want. But again, just want to make sure that they're cooked through when we get to that stage. So next we're off to, well, basically I use a big wok, but it really, I mean, just any big pan that you've got that you can kind of fry in inverted commas. It's not really frying because there's a little bit of oil there just to stop them sticking, but frankly if you had a decent pan, this is a really old pan, so it would probably be that it would be non-stick and you wouldn't need the oil, but if you think you do, then just add a tiny bit of oil. I just, as you saw, wiped it round. Then I'm adding my frozen onion. I say frozen, by this point it's pretty much not frozen because I'd left it out and it defrosts pretty quickly, but I just put that in first and just stir that around for a few minutes just to let it just brown, well not brown off, just cook off a little bit before I add the other vegetables. And then we're just going to literally just add them all in, all those ones that we chopped all in. I start off with just a little bit, just so I can mix the onion in a bit because it tends to otherwise just get stuck at the bottom, and then I just add all the rest, gradually just mixing it all up because you want all those colours all thoroughly mixed and really, really nice. Now what we then do is we're going to leave it, we're going to just stir it for a few minutes, and then we're going to leave it just to soften off. You're going to, at the moment it's on quite a high gas, but you will then after a few seconds just turn it down to like a simmery type gas, just to leave it to gently soften down. It doesn't have to be thoroughly cooked all the way through, but it definitely needs to be softer, and so you haven't got like hard solid peppers and hard courgettes. You want them just nicely softened down. Quite often I've found that it creates quite a bit of moisture and liquid in the bottom. Don't get too worried about that, it's nice flavors. In this case it wasn't too bad, but sometimes it does, so it doesn't matter if it does because we're going to add liquid anyway. As you see, the first thing I'm doing is adding a small tin of tomatoes. This is just chopped tomatoes, any brand, any kind that you prefer. I particularly like these ones just because they're not quite as sharp as some brands that I've tried, so I just find they are nicer flavour in this, and again just mix it really, really thoroughly so that all those vegetables are nicely mixed. And I would say it was about 10 minutes for that first part to soften down and before we added the tomatoes. So just to really give it some context for you, because obviously I'm cutting bits out. Now here you see I've just got some frozen mixed vegetables and I've added that in. Now again, this is because this is a nice easy peasy way of doing things. If you want to use fresh vegetables at this point, you can, you know, chop up a bit of carrot, add some whatever you fancy really, but obviously with things like carrot and stuff, any sort of root vegetable like that, I would suggest you probably cook it off a little bit first. And you'll see here, because I didn't get the liquid in the same way as I sometimes do with some of these vegetables at the beginning, I just added a little bit more liquid. You can sort of just judge it. You want it not like swamped with liquid, but you want it moist. You want it sort of, you can see it just a little bit of bubbling away going on there. So then I added some tomato paste just to again add some flavour to that. But obviously with tomato paste and tomato, you're adding some sharpness to your vegetables. So what I like to do is just add a teaspoon of caster sugar or granulated sugar, whichever. I use caster because it melts in quicker, but that just takes off some of that sharpness. Now you're going to be adding seasoning, so that will not taste sweet because you'll be countering that. So here I'm adding some mixed herbs. Again, you could use fresh if you wanted to, and one of my favourite is chives. I use a lot of chives, but again, these are just dried. You may want to just get some fresh. I mean, they're really easy, aren't they, just to grab and chop up, and it may add some extra flavour that is really nice to that. But again, I'm going for the easy option, the quick and easy option. And these are my and this is also just, instead of salt and pepper, I use this vegetable stock. It's got quite a salty taste to it, so it's quite nice, but it's got other herbs and stuff in it, so it adds a nice flavour to it. At this stage, don't go mad with your seasoning such as salt and pepper. If you want pepper, add it now. Mum doesn't prefer the pepper, so I don't add it, by the way. But don't go crazy. You obviously want some of it to cook in because it adds flavour to it as it cooks, but you can add it later when it's cooked and you want to taste it and see, or does it need more. Much easier to add than to take away, obviously. So yeah, just now it's all mixed up. Turn it right down and just let it sort of gently cook away till it's just nice and soft. Usually 10-15 minutes, maybe towards the 15 minutes mark. Really what I base it on is when I finish this part. So I've got my white sauce, which again you can make from fresh if you want, but why would you? I say that, but I do that for my fish pies. I do make a homemade fish white sauce for that. But anyway, and then I've got grated cheese, which I did grate. It wasn't pre-bought grated, but again, if you want to make it even easier, you can buy pre-bought grated cheese. And then some sheets of lasagna, which the way that this is, I don't know, what I'm doing is basically making ready meals that I put in the freezer, and then you grab one and it's basically, you think, oh right, tomorrow I fancy a lasagna for my dinner, so you take it out, or in the morning before you go to work, and by the evening it'll be defrosted enough that you can then just pop it in the oven and it's ready to go. And so it's nice and easy. But instead of buying ready meals, at least you know what's in this. So with this, you need to cut the sheets of lasagna to fit and then put them in a separate dish, because you are going to need to add some hot water to them. But you'll need 3 pieces per dish, because if you're doing it individually, dishes like this. Now the reason I've got my little white dishes on a mat is because they've got these really rough bottoms on them and they scratch the surface of the counter really easily, so I like to put them on the cloth so they don't scratch it. But they're really handy because you can literally cook them in these ceramic dishes, you can freeze them in it, and it's just really helpful. You saw there, by the way, that I just added the boiling water from a kettle onto the lasagna. That's just literally a few minutes then, while I'm just dishing the first layer of vegetables into the pots. Again, with this, add as much or as little vegetables as you want, and obviously if you want a thicker layer, then you may want to add more vegetables to your original cooked part so that you've got enough to do it. Or if you're going to do like a double amount, because I've done it before where I've doubled it up and made 8 of these dishes in one go. So I've put the vegetables in first. I put a layer of my lasagna in next, and just be careful obviously picking these up because they're still really hot because they're in the water. You need to keep it in the water because it stops it sticking. Otherwise you find it sticks to itself, which isn't hugely helpful. And then I just basically lollop a load of the white sauce over the top of that layer. Obviously making sure that it's approximately half of the jar that you're using, if you're using a jar. And then for me, I add a little bit of the grated cheese in the middle here. I just think it adds a nice flavour. It softens down the vegetables a little bit. Again, if you're not careful, if you don't get the balance right, you can find that the vegetable you need that ratio to be right so that it all blends together nicely and one isn't dominating the other. And I just find the cheese really helps that. And then obviously, as you saw, another layer of lasagna followed by another layer of the vegetable mixture. So it's just really simple. Make your vegetables mixture, get your sauce ready, get your grated cheese and lasagna sheets ready, and then construct. And again, after putting the vegetable layer on, put our final layer of lasagna. So that's 3 sheets of lasagna, and then final bit is obviously the last layer of white sauce. With this layer, you want to make sure that you cover sort of each of the edges of your lasagna sheet there so that it doesn't burn when it goes in the oven and you're cooking it. And then finally a coat of cheese, and again with the grated cheese as much or as little as you want. So there they are, 4 done. 3 will go in the freezer and 1 will be cooked because we're going to give one of these to Mum tonight, so I will be able to show you what that looks like. And there it is done, and it just is yummy. So I hope you've enjoyed making this with me, and I'd love to know if you have a go or if you've got your own version of it. I'd love to hear about it. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.